Hello friends, I am Shivaji Bhaskar, Faculty of Russian at the School of Foreign Languages, IGNOU. I welcome you all to this course Basics of Russian Communication Skills Part 1. As you must be aware that in this course we have been talking about the basics of Russian grammar and phonetics. We have covered the Russian alphabet, certain other important aspects of the Russian grammar. We have seen that how the verbs are being conjugated. We have also seen with the help of some examples how do we use certain case system in Russian. Since now we are talking about the changing of the nouns, whether they belong to the masculine gender or the feminine gender or the neuter gender in the case known as prepositional case. In the previous module, we have briefly touched upon the concept that the question when we frame to talk about whom and about what. So, the basic questions we ask for that is a kom and a чем. You are already aware that in case of masculine gender, we have certain set rules that how the word which belongs to the masculine gender from nominative changes into prepositional, especially when we question have like кто это and что это. In prepositional we ask о ком and о чем, which means about whom and about what. We have seen the neuter gender, we have touched upon little bit about the feminine gender words as well, like in case of кто это. So, we have words like подруга, сестра, девушка, they change into a подруге, a сестре, a девушке. So, the basic rule that the ending goes away replaced by ye at the end. For example, о ком он говорит о подруге, о ком он думает о сестре. So, these kind of constructions we have already done in our previous module. Now, we will see that how further such words which we find in Russian which belong to the feminine gender changes when we frame the question что to о чем. We have seen certain words like fabrika, komnata, Moskva, etc. They are being changed from the nominative ending into the prepositional, especially when we have the question о чем, like a fabriке, a komnate, a Moskve, etc. Now, we will be talking about such words of the feminine gender which ends with ya and ie. Let us see the next part. Here we have certain words of the feminine gender like lecция, конференция, Россия, India, Historia. So, what is the commonality between these words? That all of them are inanimate in nature. So, that is why we frame the question что это. Это лекция, это конференция, это Россия, это Индия, это история и так далее. However, when we change the question from что to о чем, we will see the difference when the basic difference we see is the ending of that particular noun from лекция to a лекции. О чем он говорит? So, I am framing a question. О чем он говорит, about what he is talking. Он говорит, he is talking a лекции, about the lecture. Likewise, you can frame the question о чем, then you can say о конференции, о России, об Индии, об истории. Почему? Why? Because India, it starts with vowel E, that is a об Инди. Historia is also similar, об истории. So, likewise, you have to keep this fact in mind. Now, let us go ahead and see some of the examples of the feminine gender words which ends with soft sign. If you remember in our previous modules, we have done certain words which ends with soft sign, but those belong to masculine gender. Now, in this case, we are going to do some words which are of feminine gender, but they also end with soft sign. So, like noć, chitrać, plošť. If you remember that the rule is the soft sign goes away and replaced by ye in that case, but when they are of feminine gender, in this case they are replaced by e. Noć, noći, chitrać, achitrać, plošť, aplošť. So, whenever you are saying that you are using a word of the feminine gender, the question is o čem or o kom, it would change into o čem on говорит. For example, on говорит о красной площади. So, in Russian we have the word expression красная площадь, red square. О чем он говорит, about what he is talking. He is talking, он говорит о красной площади. So, please see the example. Here you know it is absolutely clear what is the difference between the words of the masculine gender which ends with soft sign. There we replace the soft sign with ye, and in this case it is being replaced by e. Now, please pay attention to certain words which are of animate nature. So, the question is кто, like Deutsch, mać. Deutsch means daughter, mać means mother. О ком он думает о дочери. About whom he is thinking? He is thinking about daughter. О чем он рассказывает? About whom he is narrating? Он рассказывает о матери. He is narrating about mother. So, these kind of questions when you frame, you have to be very clear whether the word noć, Deutsch, chitrać, mać, they are inanimate or animate. So, this thing has to be very clear from the beginning, and then later on you can see that how they are being changed. However, the ending is similar whether it is noć or doć or mać, when they are being changed from что to о чем or кто to о ком, the ending is being replaced by e. Alright, now let us go ahead and pay attention to some of the expressions which we have specifically designed for you, so that you see that how the adjective ending is also changing. So, first we are going to take a masculine gender word along with adjective. So, adjective endings we have is I kratki and o I kratki. So, these two endings I kratki and o kratki, they are replaced by om in both the cases. So, novi drug or большой завод, there are two different expressions, new friend and big plant. So, absolutely the first one is animate, the second one is inanimate. However, let us see how they are changed. Novi drug о новом друге, большой завод о большом заводе. So, if you pay attention to the ending of these two adjectives, they are absolutely similar. However, the difference only is that one is animate, the other one is inanimate. Alright. So, now let us pay attention to the next sentence. Savremenный город, о современном городе. So, city is inanimate. О чем он говорит? Он говорит о современном городе. He is talking about a contemporary city. Then the next one is известный писатель, famous writer. Известный писатель. Look at the ending of the adjective and noun. The noun ends with soft sign, whereas the adjective is I kratke. So, in case of masculine, we already know that soft sign shall be replaced by ye, and ikratki shall be replaced by om. Ob is Vietnam pisatelя. All right, so it's clear. О чем он думает? Он думает об известном писателе. About whom he is thinking? He is thinking about famous writer. Okay, here you can also use рассказывать. О ком он рассказывает, about whom he is narrating. Он рассказывает об известном писателе. So, in place of an, or you can also use она. Она рассказывает о известном писателе. Okay? Okay, now let us go ahead. Here we are going to discuss certain adjectives which ends with e kratki. Earlier we have done adjectives which ends with e kratki. Here you are seeing adjectives which are ending with e kratki. They are also replaced, but with yem. Earlier it was replaced by om. Okay, so that is the difference. So, the word which is ending with sh e kratki will change into yem. Хороший брат, good brother. О ком он говорит? Он говорит о хорошем брате. About whom he is talking? He is talking about good brother. О хорошем брате. Соседний дом, neighboring house. О соседнем доме, about neighboring house. Последний концерт, the last concert. О последнем. So, here you can see that instead of om, it has been changed into о последнем концерте, yem. So, the ending is yem, последнем. And when we look at the adjective ending, it is n e kratki. So, it is changing into nem, последнем. So, yem, the sound of yem would come. So, хороший, хорошим, соседний, соседним, последний, последним. Okay? So, the pronunciation is also like that because of the role of stress or udariniya. So, sometimes you will see or you will hear a very clear sound, especially in case of большом доме, but in case of хороший, хорошим, соседний, соседним, последний, последним. So, there is a slight difference in that, however, the rule remains same. All right, now let us go ahead. Here we are going to talk about certain adjective endings of the feminine gender words or nouns. Let us see how they are changed from akom and achom. So, adjective endings such as aya, they are replaced by o e kratki. So, what kind of adjectives do we know, like novaya, maladaya, большая, любимая, известная. Now, let us place some nouns. Novaya, подруга, new, female friend, молодая сестра, younger sister, большая фабрика, big factory, любимая страна, favorite country, известная артистка, famous female artist. All right. So, let us change now from кто to akom, from animate to animate, but from nominative to preposition. Новая подруга, а новой подруге. О ком он думает? Он думает о новой подруге. About whom he is thinking? He is thinking about new female friend. О ком он рассказывает? Он рассказывает о молодой сестре. About whom he is talking? He is talking about younger sister. Okay? Then о чем он говорит? About what he is talking? Он говорит о большой фабрике. So, here in this case, when we have fabrika, which means inanimate, so So, it is changing again same, but the meaning is changing because now we are talking about something which is inanimate. So, the question would be Achom on Gavrit, about what he is talking. So, the answer can be O Gavrit a большой фабрике. He is talking about big factory. Then you have Любимая страна, again inanimate, известная артистка, it's animate. So, the question would be о ком. Alright, I hope the concept is clear. Now, let us go ahead and pay attention to this case where we will find certain adjectives which end with ya. So, we have the adjectives like соседняя, сегодняшняя, последняя. These are adjective endings. The same endings are replaced by ye, и краткий. Like о ком он говорит, about whom he is talking. Он говорит о соседней девушке. So, девушка changes into девушка, but the adjective endings соседняя, so the я changes into е и краткий. Соседней девушке. Сегодняшняя газета, о чем он говорит? Он говорит о сегодняшней газете. And последняя выставка, it can also be changed from о чем он говорит or о чем он рассказывает о последней выставке. So, these are the basic difference between the endings. I would like to request you all to look at the endings of all the adjectives of masculine, feminine and neuter gender words and nouns and compare them, and look at the basic rule that how the noun changes and how the adjective and changes, especially in case of the question when we frame кто, что and о ком, о чем. So, you will have a very good grip over this particular section when you do this kind of exercise with your family and friends. You will find yourself well versed in this grammar rule, which is very essential in order to understand and learn Russian language efficiently. Okay, now let us go ahead. So, here we have seen that how the adjective endings of the masculine and feminine gender nouns are changing with a certain set rule of the Russian grammar. Now, I would like to talk about the neuter gender words. Please pay attention to the ending of these neuter gender adjectives, how they are changed from nominative что to о чем. So, the first one is большое общежитие. When we change it into о чем он говорит, about what he is talking, он говорит о большом общежитии. So, here the ending of the adjective большое changes into a большом om. So, it is very similar to the case which we did in case of masculine gender words, right. So, in the next example we have молодое государство. О чем говорит он или о чем он говорит, about what he is talking, он говорит о молодом государстве, about a young republic. Okay. So, these kind of changes you can see, and you can very well find that how the endings of these adjectives, depending upon the gender, they belong to changing. But however, there is a similarity between the endings of the nouns, the ending of the different kind of adjectives, especially in case of masculine and neuter are somewhat similar, but in case of feminine gender, the adjective endings are absolutely different, but there is a similarity that whether these adjective endings are of animate or inanimate, they have the same set of rules. So, you have only need to understand these different words as per their animate or inanimate nature. So, that is the most important aspect of this entire exercise which we are doing. Now, let us go ahead and pay attention to some of the words of neuter gender which ends with ye. Okay, so, these adjective endings like Sivatishnya sabranya, today's meeting, Sivatishnyam sabranya. So, the ending ye changes into yem. However, the noun remains same. Achom on Gavrit Sivatishnyayam sabrani. About what he is talking? He is talking about today's meeting. Sasyednyaye zdanya, neighboring building. Achum on raskazivait. About what he is narrating? He is narrating on raskazivait a sasyednyam zdani. So, it is absolutely clear again that how the ending of the adjectives which has ye, they change into yem. Same is the case in the masculine gender. So, that is why it is also not very difficult for you to remember the aspect, but the only thing is that you have to be very clear about the gender of the noun, as well as you have to be very clear when framing the question like что, кто или о чем или о ком. Okay? So, you have to be very clear about that, rest is not a difficult task. So, now let us go ahead and pay attention to this special task which we have is that whenever we are using the personal pronouns in a sentence, especially when we have the question a kom. So, you have to be very careful. So, that is why in nominative we have personal pronouns like ya, ty, on, ana, mue, we and ani, which means I, you singular, on means he, ana means she, me means we means you plural and ani means they. When we change it into the personal pronouns in the case of akom, for example, akom on gavrit abaminiye, on gavrit abaminiye, who is talking about me. So, from I it changes into about me. From ti achom on gavrit. So, when we say achom, it means inanimate, but in this personal pronoun case it means every question has to be akom. Akom on gavrit anas, he is talking about us. Then akom on gavrit avas, he is talking about you. And finally, the question is akom on gavrit anik, he is talking about all of us. So, you have to be very clear when and how to use personal pronouns. They would only be used in case of when the question is akom. Okay, now let us revise quickly all the important aspects we have just done. We have already done the masculine gender, the neuter gender and feminine gender nouns, how they are changed when we have the question akom and achom depending upon their nature, whether they are animate or inanimate. We have also seen how the ending of adjectives are changing as per their nouns, and then we have seen whether they are differentiated between animate or inanimate. So, we have several examples like novi drug, большой завод, современный город. So, in this case when we have drug, it actually means it is animate. So, akom a novam drug here. When we have case like большой завод, Zavod inanimate, achom. So, now let us go ahead. We have certain questions like Kharoshi brat. So, brat is akom, whereas sasyedni dom is inanimate. So, achom. Now, let us go ahead. We have certain examples from the feminine gender like novaya padruga. Here we have seen padruga. So, padruga is akom, animate. So, a novai padruga, whereas Lubimaya strana, favorite country, is achom. So, the question would be achom and the answer would be a Lubimaya stranya. Now, let us go ahead. Here you have seen that some of the endings of the adjectives like yaya, like sasyednyaya devushka. Here the question would be akom, a sasyednyai devushka. Whereas you have a question paslyednyaya vistavka, the question would be achom. So, the answer would be a paslyednyai vistavkya. Okay. Now, let us go ahead. Here you have seen certain examples of neuter gender words like большое общежитие. So, большое общежитие, it is simply inanimate. So, the question would be achom, a большом общежитии. And similarly, молодое государство, the question again would be achom and the answer would be a молодом государстве. Okay, so, the concept is absolutely clear. Now, let us go ahead and pay attention to a few more examples which we have covered, like the adjectives which ends with ye in case of neuter gender words like sabranya or zdanya. So, when we have sabranya, zdanya, they are inanimate, the question would be achom, a sivatshnyayam sabrani, achom a sasyednam zdani. So, these kind of constructions you can also remember, but the most important thing is whether to categorize them in animate or inanimate depending upon their nature. Okay. Now, let us conclude this module with this last part, that in personal pronouns, because when we use personal pronouns they are strictly akom. So, when we use akom about whom, so the question has to be constructed like that, akom ungavrit. So, then you can have abaminye, asibye, anyom, anyei, anas, avas and anik. So, similarly, I would like to recommend you all to use all these kind of certain concepts where we are talking about the nouns ending as well as adjective endings, and finally, the use of personal pronouns in prepositional case, especially when we are using the question akom. So, you can also make your own sentences and you can also note them down in your notebooks and discuss it with your family and friends in order to communicate in Russian efficiently, as well as just to see the difference between different types of words which we have in Russian and differentiate them as animate and inanimate. You will find that there are numerous such examples which you might thought that they are of animate nature, but they are not, they are inanimate, and likewise. But since the difference is only of their nature, however, the grammar's pattern remains same. So, I hope you all enjoyed this session very much. We will be covering about different such more concepts in our upcoming module. Thank you.